Hi there, I am Laina Orlando, and I am coming to you live because I have been guided to share some messages that I have been recording and uploading to YouTube, and it just seems to take quite a while to go through that process during a busy day. And when I have an inspiration to share something with you, I want to share it in that moment, and I have realized that I might as well just do them as live events. So here we go. This is all about sharing what I have come to discover is what is happening in this world right now. And that is that we're in the middle of a great awakening. We're in the process of shifting from one dimension, what we call the 3D world, into the fifth dimension of consciousness. The 3D world is a world where our mind, we have basically been trained to think information that has been programmed into our minds as if that information is the only truth that there is. In the 3D world, in the third dimension of consciousness, we're literally not tapping to our full potential. We are indoctrinated with information that we all have agreed must be the truth because it's what everybody believes. However, when we enter into a spiritual awakening, which is what began to happen to me about almost 20 years ago, and I entered into what is known as a spiritual journey. And many of us go through that as what is called the dark night of the soul. And it is a process that to me has come to really be best described as the dark years of our ego. This is when we begin to realize that we can think whatever is put into our mind, or we can choose to go beyond that thinking, go into the knowingness. Because inside each and every one of us, as the master teacher Jesus told us 2,000 years ago, that the kingdom of heaven is within. And when we begin our spiritual awakening, we begin to question, what is the kingdom of heaven? What is God? What is truth? Who am I? Why am I here? What is my purpose? And when we begin to enter into this curiosity about who am I and why am I here, if we stay with it long enough, we begin to access realms that are beyond our conscious mind, are beyond what we can be thinking about. We enter the realm of feeling, of knowingness, of accessing a sense of oneness with all that is. And because I went through that experience, and I'm still going through different levels of it, I have become a teacher of these spiritual teachings that have been transforming my life. Now, I went through a process where, like every spiritual teacher, my ego got filled with spiritual information. And it wasn't until I began to study A Course in Miracles, this incredible book, A Course in Miracles, that I began to realize that there is way, way more to the spiritual journey than what I thought there was when I thought I already was awakened. I already had achieved the level of enlightenment that I thought was it. We have to continue to question what we believe until we come to the place that we are not right about anything. To be really awake is to ascend beyond anything and everything that the world teaches as true and begin to allow ourselves to feel truth. And to feel truth, your mind has to be quiet. Because while the mind is busy, while the ego is busy telling you what it knows about truth, its interpretation about truth, it is limiting the experience of what truth is. So I have been inspired to help people understand that we are in the middle of a massive, massive spiritual awakening. It's biblical in proportions. It is truly an opportunity for us to see what happens when we operate unconscious, unaware, it's another word for unconscious, of the truth of who we are. And we operate with the limited truth, small t truth, of what we think we are. We literally have to completely look at what we thought was true and say to it, you are no longer my truth. But you can't say to what you think is true, you're not true anymore, until you begin to feel something greater, a greater truth, a truth that transcends what your mind wants to tell you, what your brain wants to tell you, your head wants to tell you. It is a truth that has to be felt with the heart. And A Course in Miracles has helped me really understand this. So I want to give you a very simple visual to help explain as best as I possibly can what I'm talking about. So you know that drawing that we're all familiar with, this one, the yin and yang symbol. So when we are born, every single one of us is the bringer of love and light. But we have made a choice to be human, so we have the capacity to be experiencing, thinking that we're only human, and in essence, basically make a decision that our divinity is not true. So it's like we forget the truth of who we are, which this is a symbol of our God essence, and there's a little bit of ego inside of us because it's what allows us to have a sense of experience or a sense of separation that allows us to be human. This is what happens when we listen to the ego mind. When we let this take over, in essence, it becomes the truth of who we are. And what is left, which we cannot deny our truth, that we are as God created us, we are the essence of love and light, no matter how much we deny it, that little pilot light never goes away. The truth of who we are remains inside of us, whether we remember it or not, whether we believe it or not, whether we access it or not, it does not matter. The process of awakening is to begin to remove more of our egoic mind and access more of God's mind. So the process from moving from making ego our master to allowing God within to activate the truth of who we are takes time, takes for many lifetimes. This is a process truly when you understand the big picture of the cosmos. We're talking about lifetimes. In this lifetime, however, many of us have come in with an agreement to wake up within a couple of decades to be in service to this great awakening that the whole of humanity is going through. So what I want to offer, and this is just this nudge that I keep feeling about sharing this information that I know, is that we are about to experience a very rude awakening. Humanity has descended into a level of darkness. I mean, it is just absolutely amazing when you begin to pull back and see what humanity is capable of, what the human being can do. It can get pretty dark. It can deny God. And in denying God, it will create some pretty horrendous things. We pull a veil over our eyes, and veil, if you take the letters and you shift them around, you get the word evil. Evil and veil are basically the same thing. When we put a veil before us and deny the truth of who we are, block the truth of who we are, we can get pretty evil. And the word evil and veil also have the word live. If we know the truth of who we are, we can live in alignment with love, with light, with collaboration, with happiness. As our Constitution states, we are all endowed by the Creator with the same inalienable rights of life, liberty, and happiness. When we know the truth of who we are, we can live happy lives. And we don't mind at all. Actually, we love it when everybody else lives that way too. But when we have made the ego our master, we listen to the voice of fear, of darkness, of greed, of selfishness, of lack. And when we listen to that voice, what happens to us is our mind becomes so constricted that we think that we are right, but we're all we are is righteous. The truth of who we are needs to be felt. It really, truly needs to be felt. And to offer an opportunity for us to begin to understand what this truth is about who we are, I want to share some passages from A Course in Miracles. And I'm going to share these as often as I possibly can because the message is consistent with what I experienced before I ever began to study The Course in Miracles. The Course in Miracles came 10 years after I began my journey. And it just helped me understand what those first 10 years were all about. And they were about discovering that in me are two voices, the voice of the ego, which is pretty loud, and it's what causes all anxiety, confusion. It also makes me think I'm righteous. And there's the voice of God, source, spirit, whatever you want to call it, that can only be felt when we go into stillness, because we have to feel it with our heart. Our mind cannot comprehend something that is infinite, but our heart can feel it. And it is absolutely life-changing when you begin to feel that. So I want to offer, as often as possible, information to help you question what you think is true, to help you look at what the ego has created, a world that has become pretty dark and dense, and what we could experience if we align with the voice for God and co-create together what the Course calls a happy dream, a dream where everybody gets to experience, we call it the American dream, the ability to live freely on this planet, to live a sovereign life. And with what is happening in the world today, it is clear for me now that I can see things from the perspective of God, it is very clear that our minds, because we have been trained to believe the egoic lies, and they're all lies. That's all the ego does, is it tells us things that are not true. But we hear them so much that we think that they are true. But they're still not true, even if we repeat them 1,000 times. So the world today is filled with people that have made the ego their master, including spiritual people. I know I was one of those. It took me a while to move, years to move beyond my spiritualized ego, to begin to stop saying that I'm creating my own reality, and then to give power to things outside of me. To stop saying that I and the Father are one, that I am made of the same substance that God is, as are the teachings in beautiful traditions like unity, like science of mind, like so many other amazing teachings, even in Hinduism, even in Buddhism, where we believe that we are not our thoughts, but yet here we are professing to be these spiritual people, these people who have achieved a level of awareness, of oneness, and yet we give external things power. There's nothing wrong with believing something outside of us has power over us. We create our own reality, so that's okay. But when our mind is confused to believe and believes that we create our own reality, yet something has power over us, we have got to have what the Course in Miracles says, a teacher of God, a teacher who is willing to speak the truth of God to with gentleness and defenselessness. I don't need to defend what I'm teaching, and I don't need to share this in any other way other than gently, because I trust the truth. I have felt the truth. I know the truth in me. But if I don't share what has saved my life, what has transformed me, then it really becomes one of those things that I have to live with, that, oh my gosh, I have this information and I didn't share it. I don't need anybody to agree with it, but I need to share it because it's what I'm guided to do, and I am going to do what I know is my truth to do. So I want to share with you a little passage from A Course in Miracles, just a little tidbit. This is a book that is packed with information. Look how big this is. But I want to share just a little part. It's inside of chapter 31, which is the final chapter in 31 chapters that forms the text, which is at the beginning of the book. And this says that the lessons to be learned are only two. Very simple, only two. Each has its outcome in a different world, and each world follows surely from its source. So if the source of the teaching comes from fear, from the ego, it's going to have one outcome. If it comes from love, if it comes from God, it will have a completely different outcome. The way to look at this is when we listen to the voice for God, there is one outcome. This is the world that we would be experiencing. When we listen to the voice for ego, we're going to have a very different outcome. And it's okay, because God's not going to punish any of us. We're creating our own reality. So there's certain outcome of the lesson that God's Son is guilty is the world that you see. So when we operate in the sense that people are bad and look at what they did, they're terrible, the world is going to hell in a handbasket, well, that's basically the world that we see right now, with all of the fears, with the potential scares, with the virus, with the vaccines, with so many things that have gotten us so whipped up into a sense of fear, blaming others, wanting to control what others do, that we have lost our awareness of the power that is inside of us. So let me continue. So it is a world of terror and despair when we listen to that voice that activates that guilt inside of us, the voice of the ego. Nor is there hope of happiness in it. There is no plan for safety that you can make that ever will succeed. Not in the world that the ego has made, in the world of darkness. There is no joy that you can seek for here, and hope that you will find it. Yet this is not the only outcome which your learning can produce. However much you may have overlearned your chosen task, the lesson that reflects the love of God is stronger still. So we have been taught to believe that the world that the ego has made is what is real. The world of separation, hierarchies, haves, have-nots, lack and limitation, win, lose, the world of competition, the world of a few are chosen and the rest are not. A world where authority is taught to us, it exists outside of us, where we look to others to tell us our own truth. That is the world that the ego has made. And it has made that world because the ego mind, the thoughts, that's all ego is thoughts. The thoughts of the ego were designed to help us have a human experience. But we got totally lost in the human experience, believing we are only these bodies, that we blocked the truth of our divine essence. We blocked the truth that God is the essence that powers everything, and it is therefore what is inside of us. So no matter how much we want to worship the ego, it doesn't matter. What we truly are, the light of God and the love of God, is always inside of us. Yes, it seems like it goes dormant, but that doesn't mean it goes away. So our work is to extend this light, to make it so bright and so clear that it burns away what is not true, until while we are in the world and have an ego, we can experience a happy dream. Right now we're in a nightmare where there's so much suffering, but we can shift it so that while we are in the world, we are listening to that voice for God. So that voice for God can get stronger still. And you will learn God's Son is innocent, and you will see another world. So one of the beautiful things that I have discovered through A Course in Miracles is that God, this creative source of all that is, that has given us the ability to be so powerful, so magnificent, to really create whatever we want to create, because we're made in the image of a creator. God imagined us, the ultimate magician, if you will. Imagination comes from the word, imagine, magician. We have been given the power to imagine a world in any way that we want to imagine it. We have that ability. The Course in Miracles tells us that the lessons to be learned are only two. So when we learn to create from greed, from scarcity, from lack, from limitation, from fear of death, we are not living in a state of abundance, of expression, of joy, of sharing. We live in a world of greed. What can I get? Because if it goes away, it's going to kill me. So I take care of me first. It's a very selfish world. The world that the Course in Miracles wants us to see is a world when you understand that we are powerful beyond measure. We're just using our power to limit ourselves. We're using our power to think thoughts that are just not uplifting, that are not loving. Any thought that judges ourselves or judges others is not a productive thought. Yes, we have to practice discernment, but judgment that comes from right or wrong, good or bad, is completely of the ego. The way that we would look at things if we were looking at them from the eyes of God, if we use that vision of the Creator inside of us, we would see only everyone being an innocent child of God, a holy brother and sister, either expressing themselves through the thoughts that God has given it, or through the thoughts of the ego learned from the world. And when we begin to see everybody as nothing more than someone who is either expressing love or calling for love, that's what that is. When we live in fear, it's a call for love. If we saw everybody that way, we could be very gentle with them. But we can't be gentle with others when we are in fear ourselves. So let me read this next section. So the outcome of the lesson that God's son is guilty, I'm sorry, let me repeat that. The outcome of the lesson that God's son is guiltless is a world in which there is no fear and everything is lit with hope and sparkles with a gentle friendliness. So we have the ability to create a beautiful world for all of us. And we are moving in that direction, by the way. We cannot not ascend into the fifth dimension of consciousness, because just like grades in school, you can repeat second grade a couple of times, but at some point you're going to be moved. You're going to be assisted to succeed, because it doesn't serve the school to have people stay in second grade forever. So we are going to be moved into a higher level of consciousness. For that to happen, we have to see everything that is of a low consciousness so that we can choose that we don't want that anymore. What is happening is that everything that is a block to love, a block to consciousness, a block to supporting one another, collaboration, co-creation, uplifting, everything that is blocking that is coming to the surface. All of the lies that we have told one another, all of the ways that we manipulate each other, governments that have been corrupt, media that has been lying, movies and books and things written to control our minds, to tell us that we need to change our appearance to be happy, that the advertising that has had us mortgage our lives so that we can buy, youth or whatever it might be, to be able to look better so that we are better looking than our sister or our neighbor or whatever. We have to look at all of the ways that we have agreed to participate in a world that has been operating with greed. We agree to that. Every single time we go into debt, we're agreeing with greed. We're saying, yeah, let me go into further debt so that you can make more money. Or the other way around. I want you to go into further debt. Let me create a splashy advertisement that will get you to go buy something else, because I'm going to tell you that without it, you're not going to be happy. And because we have lost our sense of knowingness, where happiness is, it's within us. It's one of our inalienable rights granted to each and every one of us. But because we're not connected from the time that we're little with the voice within, we're disconnected. Well, we look for the voice of happiness outside of ourselves. That's why we look for love in all the wrong places. When we don't come inside to listen to the voice for love, we cannot ground ourselves in the truth of who we are, and we become very gullible. Our foundation is not built on solid rock. It's built on shaky sand, on what do you call that? Quicksand. And we cannot be firm. So when we agree to participate in the game of greed, we literally give way to a very dark world, a world that operates in the shadows and darkness, a world where things like human trafficking, like drug trafficking, like, illegal things happening, it can take place. Because we have to think about this logically. How can human trafficking, how can drug trafficking take place? When it's easy to determine with social media, with the internet, who hasn't paid money on their taxes, don't we have the same ability to find out who's trafficking a child, who's trafficking drugs? How is it that it is so difficult to convict the people that we know are doing this, that there is the evidence that they're doing these things? Well, you have to logically think. Somebody must be permitting this. There must be systems at play that allow, in many levels of power, for those things to happen. So we've got to get really, really, really real with ourselves and see that, yes, when we operate from the ego, we will create a world that creates suffering for ourselves and others. So to shift to listening to God requires that we look at that world that is not loving, that world that is full of suffering, and we need to look at it and recognize our part in it, not to experience guilt, but to claim our power from it. Because when we decide, I don't want that thing that I see happening out there, we are saying, I have the power to do something about it. And the power to do something about it comes from inside, getting to know the essence of the creative source that we are. Find out our power to create that were given to us since the beginning of our experience here on earth. So let me continue to read from A Course in Miracles. So the outcome of the lesson that God's Son is guiltless, that all of us are innocent beings just operating with the information that is in our mind, is a world where there will be no fear and everything is lit, is brilliant with hope, and it will sparkle with gentle friendliness. Nothing but calls to you in soft appeal to be your friend. And let it join with you. And never does a call remain unheard, misunderstood, nor left unanswered. And you will understand it was this call that everyone and everything within the world has always made. Yes, we have always been asking for goodness. We are born good people. We are born divine souls. We are born innocent. Everything that is dark within us is something that we learn along the way. Very difficult to catch because we have to admit that we are judgmental. We have to admit that we lie, that we are selfish, that we do things to manipulate others. All of that comes from the lack of awareness of who we really are. So we do things that are not nice, but they collectively give permission to the world of those who have power to do things that are really not nice to the greater collective of humanity. We have been perceiving that the things that are not okay, somehow we permit them. We have been perceiving that as, well, it's just the way that things are. It's just the way the world works. So you had been deceived by forms that have been hidden from us. We have been deceived by all kinds of things, by those who tell us that God is outside of us, by those who tell us that we need an external authority to validate us. We have been deceived by those things. And so you did not hear the call for oneness, the call for goodness, and had lost a friend who always wanted to be a part of us. The soft eternal calling of each part of God's creation to the whole, to the oneness, is heard throughout the world that this second lesson brings. So the first lesson, because there's only 2 lessons to learn, 2 lessons, very simple. Are we going to listen to the voice of the ego to the point that it gets really big? Or are we going to listen to the voice of God that is big with us from the very beginning and keep it pure? Keep it in a state of our eternal truth, where we go to, where we decide that we are going to be loving, kind, gentle. You know, Buddhism wants us to recognize that kindness should be the only religion we operate from. Kindness and gentleness and softness is natural, and it is what we desire as children. But then we get taught to protect ourselves with all of the indoctrination that we have received. So there's no living thing that does not share the universal will that it be whole, and that you do not leave its call unheard. Yes, it is our ultimate desire to experience wholeness. Without your answer, it is left to die, as it is saved from death when you have heard its calling as the ancient call for life, and understood that it is but your own. The Christ in you remembers God with all the certainty with which he knows his love. But only if his Son is innocent can he be loved. So we really truly are, every single one of us, the presence of God that either with our human experience became darkened because we began to believe the thoughts of the ego, the thoughts of fear, of judgment, of limitation. Let me turn it this way in case you can read the words. Or we remain connected to the truth of who we are, which is very rare, because that requires a conscious parent, a parent who teaches their child to listen to the voice inside of them, and not the parent, not the teacher, not the preacher, not somebody else telling them what is true. When we're allowed to discover the truth that is really inside of us, we cultivate a relationship with the Creator. We cultivate a relationship with something that will allow us to know who we are, so we can experience her wholeness. And when we experience her wholeness, we don't go looking for love in all the wrong places. We don't value things like money, status, and positions of power. We value oneness, connection, kindness, and upliftment. The world is in the middle of a great awakening. Before we awaken and allow the voice for God to get active again, and for all of us to live from that place of love, we are going to have to face all of the ways that we have blocked it. There is no way to awaken. That's what the dark night of the soul is. The dark years of the ego, discovering what our ego has created. So I will continue to share these messages because I cannot not share them, to make it as available as possible to anybody who's interested. I have created lots of other messages. I do free workshops on Wednesdays at 12 o'clock Eastern Standard Time called Happy Dream Creators, because the Course in Miracles wants us to create a happy dream. The American Dream, Course in Miracles wants to show us how to create that, and even better. But we can't create a happy dream until we face the nightmare that we have collectively created. Not by denying it, not by taking sides and blaming one another, but by looking at it and saying, we don't want this anymore. And none of us wants all this suffering. We really don't. But until we talk about what we want, well, guess what? We are going to continue to allow what we don't want to exist in this world. So the invitation is to just let things be simple. There are only two lessons. Are you listening to the voice for God, the voice for love, or are you listening to the voice of the ego, the voice for fear? One leads to joy, happiness, equality, peace on earth. One has led us to the world of chaos that we live in now. Are we going to continue to listen to the voice that has created this mess? Or are we going to get curious and begin to ask, to question, to discover, to uncover another way? Thanks a bunch for spending this time with me, and I look forward to seeing you in the next one. If you've enjoyed this message, please share it. And if you like what I've shared, please go to my YouTube page, Laina Orlando. Go to my website, lainaorlando.com. I've got lots of information because I want to help humanity ascend into the higher frequencies of the fifth dimension, which is where we all live from the truth of who we are. Magnificent beings that are made of love and light here to shine that on this world. Thanks a bunch and have a beautiful rest of your day. Bye-bye.